Ugh. My parents used to drag me off to see Santa in our annual parades when I was little. I mean, I would be up there, bundled up in about, 50 layers, standing on the freezing streets of Scranton, watching Santa ride in a fire truck. Yeah, Santa on a fire truck. Because, nothing screams Christmas magic like emergency vehicles. I'll be honest, I never really liked parades. They were always way too cold, and I couldn't feel my toes half the time. But, my parents thought it was like this great holiday tradition. So there we were, year after year. We get there early to stake out a good spot, and then we wait. And wait. And wait. By the time Santa finally made his grand entrance, I was usually too numb to care. He'd wave from the top of his fire truck, all jolly and festive, and everyone would just cheer. Meanwhile, I was just thinking about how I could not wait to get back to the car and blast the heat. Scranton and bears, huh? Well, that takes me back to Naog Park Zoo. My parents used to take me there when I was a kid. They had this bear exhibit, and we'd go and watch the bears lumber around their enclosure. I remember seeing them, but, if I'm being honest, I never really liked the zoo. My mom was the one who really was into them. Yeah, I didn't like it. My dad was born and raised in the Scranton area. I mean, of course he was. Why else would anyone choose to live there, right? He's got this deep-rooted connection to the place, all those childhood memories and such. I mean, he still lives there. As for me, when the opportunity to move away came up, I was more than happy to take it. Scranton has its charms, as few as they may be, but it's just, it's not the place for me. Scranton and fear, huh? Well, yeah, a few things come to mind. One of the big ones is the fear of getting stuck there. I mean, growing up, it felt like everyone either stayed forever or couldn't wait to leave. I was definitely in the latter camp. The idea of not getting out, of just settling into the same routines without ever seeing what else was out there, that was pretty terrifying to me. And then there's the fear of those long, cold winters. As a kid, I remember the dread that came with the icy roads and the heavy snowfalls. Driving in that weather was always nerve-wracking, and the thought of getting stranded somewhere in a snowstorm, that was a real fear. When I think of Scranton and my childhood, one of the first things that comes to mind is death. My mom died when I was very young, and then a few years later, my little brother passed away too. That was rough. My mother died from cancer. It happened slowly, and I saw her get worse and worse right up until she was gone. And my brother Tommy's death was much more sudden. He was murdered during a break-in when he was very young. My dad was working overnight, and it was just me and Tommy at home. It happened late, and I was asleep when it all went down. I didn't even know anything had happened until my dad came home and woke me up. The police said Tommy was shot once, and he died instantly. There were obvious signs of robbery, but the burglar didn't take much. The worst part? I was supposed to be looking after Tommy, and I didn't even wake up from the gunshot. So yeah, I don't have a lot of good childhood memories from Scranton. When I was a kid, I spent way too much time trying to figure out Santa. I mean, the guy's ancient, right? He never dies, never even seems to get older, so he had to be immortal. I decided he must be some kind of mythical creature. And for a while, I thought maybe he was a trickster spirit like Loki or something. But, that doesn't fit. Santa's way too consistent for that. Tricksters like chaos. Santa's all about rules. And eventually, I narrowed it down to two possibilities. One, he could be a watcher, like from Marvel Comics. Those big-headed guys who are supposed to just observe. Yeah, I figured maybe Santa decided once a year was an acceptable amount of interfering. He watches us all year, then steps in at Christmas to reward good behavior. Or two, maybe he was Odin. Odin used to travel the world in disguise. He rode through the sky during the wild hunt, and he was all about rewarding and punishing people based on what they did. If Odin wanted to stick around and adapt to modern times, becoming Santa would have been a way to do it. Later on, I found out that part of Santa's myth is actually based on Odin, and I was a little disappointed. I thought I'd come up with something really original. Nope. I never understood why they say you should play dead if a bear attacks you. If a bear is attacking you, it's probably because it's hungry. If you pretend you're dead, it's still going to eat you. It's not going to flee the scene before the cops show up. It's a bear, not a hitman. My father's still alive, thankfully, but what comes to mind is my college roommate, Sophia's dad. He passed away when we were in school. He was really important to her. She was a very detached person, and that was the only time I saw her get really emotional. She left school right after the funeral. Apparently, she had to go take over the family business. She was my best friend in college, but we really haven't kept in touch since then. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of dying in some unbelievably stupid way that becomes the only thing people remember. Like, I don't want to be the person who stuck a fork in the toaster and got electrocuted, or the idiot who stacked two wobbly chairs to change a light bulb and snapped their neck. Yeah. It's like one dumb move, then that's it. That's the story. No one would care who I was or what I did. I'd be remembered as the only person who actually died running with scissors. After my mom and brother died, I started thinking maybe there was something behind it. At first, I figured I must be cursed when two people vanish from your life in such a short time. The kind of thing it just makes sense to a kid. I started wondering if it was something else. Not a curse exactly, but maybe some force that targeted people for reasons no one could figure out. I came up with theories. Maybe it followed bloodlines, or maybe it waited for certain patterns, like specific dates or ages. I kept a notebook and wrote down anything that felt even a little off. Patterns I thought I saw. Strange coincidences, things like that. It probably didn't make much sense, but it gave me something to focus on. Something to blame. I guess that was my way of coping. Isn't it weird how many toys are just weapons? Like, here you go, sweetie. Have a machine gun and go play in the yard. And like, nobody blinks at this stuff. It's normal. You got foam swords, plastic knives, Nerf guns the size of a microwave. There was this kid on my street who had a toy flamethrower. A flamethrower. We were 8. And then you've got Clue, a game where you figure out who got bludgeoned to death with a lead pipe in a dining room by your aunt. That's what we played on rainy days. Like, hey, want to solve a casual murder over some hot chocolate? It's nuts. I had 2 childhood pets. They were both dogs. There was a little white Maltese named Pip that we had for as long as I could remember. And then there was a bigger, more traditional looking dog we got later on. He just wandered into our yard, so we adopted him and named him Lucky. There were never any incidents with either of them, and we got rid of both of them when I was still pretty young, so I don't have any significant memories of either. I never believed in mythical creatures, even as a child. My parents used to pretend such creatures existed, like Santa, the Tooth Fairy, even Bigfoot. I've always hated it when parents lie to their kids like this. It's just setting them up for disappointment. I remember this one time in first grade, a classmate had his tooth fall out. His parents told him to put it under his pillow and the Tooth Fairy would come and bring him money. Sure enough, the next morning, he had $1. The next day at school, this kid spent all of recess trying to knock more of his teeth out to get more money. He didn't succeed, but still, that's why you shouldn't lie to your kids. Only bad things can come from it, you know? It's all fun and games until your kid is trying to punch out his own teeth for some spare change. I was really into comic books as a kid, and I'm still into them now. My dad was the one who got me hooked. He loved the comic book worlds, but never read the comics himself. He was all about the movies, the shows, the cartoons. You know, Dad would buy me tons of comic books and always ask me to explain what happened after I read them. When I started getting older, though, I thought he didn't actually care about the stories and was just trying to bond with me. But as I got older still, I realized he genuinely cared about what happened in them. He was just too busy to read them himself, so he experienced them vicariously through me. Sophia never played video games as a kid. She didn't watch cartoons, didn't know any of the usual movie references the rest of us grew up with. It was like she skipped childhood entirely, but she could talk your ear off about fine wine and 5-star restaurants. She was absurdly well-traveled for someone our age, and she knew things most people don't pick up until their 40s. And sometimes it felt like she'd been an adult forever. Like she never really had a kid phase at all. Sophia was one of those people who never seemed afraid of anything. But man, was she safety-minded and cautious. She always carried pepper spray and even talked me into doing the same. She was the one who made sure we kept the blinds closed and the doors locked, no matter what. Yeah. Sophia taught me to always be aware of my surroundings. I mean, it wasn't like she was paranoid or anything. She just had a better understanding of the dangers in the world than I did. Yeah, I met Sophia's dad a bunch of times. He would drive up to visit her pretty often. He was a really nice guy and always brought us little presents like little care packages of snacks and stuff he knew college kids could use. I never really figured out what he did for a living, but he was definitely doing well enough to cover Sophia's tuition and still spoil her. The only downside? His jokes. He was all about those dad jokes and terrible puns. And when he wasn't around, we'd joke about how his humor was the price we had to pay for the gifts he brought. I can't think of a single connection between Sophia and a bear. I mean, she never mentioned one to me, and she didn't even have a teddy bear. She did have a stuffed raccoon that kind of looked like a bear, though. We had this running joke about how the raccoon was a criminal, and she kept him around to study the criminal mind. It was only funny because he was just really cute. Sophia used to put up this small Christmas tree in our dorm room every year, complete with decorations. Yeah, it was kind of nice, actually. I wasn't much into the whole decorating thing myself, but seeing that little tree did kind of give me a cozy feel. I go to Comic-Con every year with my friends. For them, it's all about buying toys. They hit the exhibit floor hard, hunting for exclusive figures and collectibles. They get really into it, mapping out their plan of attack to make sure they snag everything on their wish list. Well, I do like browsing the floor. I'm not obsessed with the toys like they are. They just gotta have their pops. When I was a kid, toys and shows were basically the same thing. Most of the cartoons were just commercials for whatever toy line they were pushing. I had a bunch of that stuff. I remember I had 4 of 5 Voltron Lions, but I never did complete the set. What really stands out is my dad's Star Trek props. He called them collectibles, but they were basically toys he was scared to touch because they were so expensive. He had Leonard Nimoy's actual tricorder from the original series and Walter Koenig's prop phaser. He once tried to buy George Takei's foil at an auction, but he was outbid by quite a lot. My mom had this really nice camera and a whole set of lenses for it. And this was back when cameras used film. She even had all this equipment to develop the film at home. Before she had a family, she used to be a photographer. Yeah, she always said that she had no regrets about giving up photography when she had us, but, you know, as an older child, I always felt it was kind of my fault she had to quit. She had all her gear and used it every chance she got. She even taught me how to develop film. We used to cover up all the windows in our bathrooms and use it as a darkroom. When I think of friends and toys, I immediately think of my friends who are really into Funko Pops. They have these huge collections with shelves dedicated to all their favorite characters. And I'm not really into that stuff myself, but I did camp out with a friend outside a store once so they could get an extra one. There were like 2 releasing on the same day, but the store had a limit of 1 pop per person. It wasn't exactly my idea of fun, but I was helping a friend out. My first few years of school, maybe up to like 3rd or 4th grade, we were all about trading toys with other kids. It was like this mini economy with everyone making deals daily, trying to get something they really wanted instead of something they were sick of. I was really good at it. For me, it wasn't even about getting toys I wanted. The trading was the game. I would make any trade that got me something more valuable than what I started with, whether I wanted the thing or not. Then I would trade that for something more valuable, and then so on, and I'd end up trading a toy, getting it back, plus something extra, and trading it again. So, and so on. I had way more toys than I started with at the end. I didn't even care about the toys themselves. I was like a little Ferengi learning to master capitalism. When I think of Scranton and toys, the first thing that pops into my head is trains. For some reason, Scranton is really big on trains. And growing up, our house was always filled with model trains. My dad had this whole setup in the basement, complete with tiny little trees and buildings, little people. He was like obsessed. And there are even stores in Scranton dedicated to selling model trains, which always seemed a little bit excessive to me. I mean, one of our malls was even train themed. The city really embraces the whole train thing, even though honestly, it's not like it's some big train hub. I mean, sure, there's some freight trains that run through the area, but not a single commuter train stop. And the number of freight trains isn't even that high. It's just a bit more than average. It's weird, right? The city acts like it's the train capital of the world or something. I mean, I get that trains have a certain nostalgic charm, but the level of train enthusiasm there, next level. I stopped liking toys in middle school. Actually, I started really hating them. It was right around the time my brother died. We used to share all our toys, so after he was gone, they just reminded me that he wasn't there anymore. It was like this constant, painful reminder every time I looked at them. So I just couldn't stand them anymore. The only toys I still enjoy as an adult are video games. And they're different somehow. More of an escape than a reminder. Sophia wasn't really into toys. The only one she had was a single stuffed animal, a raccoon. I mean, she was just a really practical person. She was always more interested in useful things. She did have the newest iPhone and a high-end laptop. My friends are really into comic book collectibles, but that's just not my thing. I'm not into toys, especially collectibles. I'll be honest, part of me really hates the idea of owning any kind of memorabilia. It's like toys you can't even play with. I just don't get the appeal. Still, I've stood in more than my share of lines to help friends get the latest limited release items, but for me, I just collect comic books themselves. All right, let's talk about pet toys. Do you ever notice how pet toys have gotten completely out of hand? I mean, when I was a kid, a dog had a bone or maybe a squeaky ball, and that was it. Now you walk into a pet store, and there's an entire aisle dedicated to these things. There are chew toys, plush toys, puzzle toys, even toys that supposedly help clean their teeth. I mean, seriously, what is next? Doggy video games? When I was a kid, I had, this really cool Pegasus toy from the movie Clash of the Titans. Yeah, it was one of my favorites. I just forgotten about it until you just asked. Oh, and then there were my He-Man toys. Are we counting those guys as mythical creatures? I mean, there's no real merman or Skeletor. Where's the cutoff on what's considered mythical? They're all made up as part of some kind of lore. Does lore from a 1980s cartoon count? No, school in Scranton was not exactly great, especially high school. Educationally, yeah, I always felt like we were a year or two behind everybody else. There weren't any courses that were challenging in the least. It seemed like education was an afterthought at my school anyway, because the main focus, it was the football program. If you were an aspiring athlete, it was fantastic. But for the rest of us, it felt like we were just along for the ride. Resources, attention, even school spirit, they were all centered around the football team. For those of us interested in academics or other extracurriculars, it's pretty frustrating. I did make some close friends in high school, but no, I've lost touch with all of them over the years. I don't really keep in touch with anyone from Scranton. No big falling out or anything. We just drifted apart. Even now, living in New Orleans, I only have a few local friends. Most of the people I talk to regularly are ones I know online who live in other cities or, even other countries. The Scranton area was the only place she ever lived. She grew up there, just like pretty much everyone in that area. It's rare for anyone to ever move to Scranton. They only move from Scranton. I honestly don't know why everyone doesn't leave. There's almost no decent jobs. The winters are so brutal. You'd think Mother Nature had a vendetta against the place. What's even more confusing is that my mom had been to a ton of exciting places. She used to tell me stories about her adventures in Europe and other exciting places. I don't get why she never moved out of the area. I don't get it. When I think about movies in Scranton, one cool thing that stands out is that the Scranton area still has drive-ins. These days, I think drive-ins are a better option than ever. I love going to the movies, but it's almost impossible to watch a whole movie in a theater without being distracted by people's bright cell phone screens. People just sit there browsing their phones during the movie, sometimes without even turning the brightness down. It drives me crazy. So you don't have to worry about that at a drive-in. That's why they're cool. I fly back to Pennsylvania once a year for 2 reasons: to visit my dad and eat pizza. Not necessarily in that order. The Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area has an absurd number of iconic pizza places. Everyone swears their favorite one is the best in the world, and somehow they're kind of right. There must be something in the water that makes pizza amazing there. I always plan my trip around hitting as many of them as I can. Oh, seeing my dad is nice too. But the pizza. We had a couple of dogs that were part of the family, but my younger brother turned out to be allergic to them. I remember how devastated I was when my parents sat us down and explained that Tommy's allergies were getting worse and we had to get the dogs away. I mean, we found good homes for them, but it didn't make the goodbye any easier. I moved into a new apartment less than a year ago, and for the first time in my life, I have a place that allows pets. So I have a dog now for the first time since I was very young. He's a Chihuahua named Spock. You'd think a little city like Scranton wouldn't have any urban legends, but surprisingly, it's got a couple. There's the Scranton Sasquatch and the Suskin Screamer. The Scranton Sasquatch is, basically our local version of Bigfoot, supposedly wandering around, the woods outside the city. And then there's the Suskin Screamer, which it's like this ghostly figure people claim to hear screaming near the old railroad tracks in Suskin, just outside of Scranton. Look, these aren't exactly popular myths. I'd say half the people from Scranton probably never even heard of them. So, at least the area has some urban legends of its own. Well, I lost 2 immediate family members in back-to-back tragedies while I lived there, so yeah, I do associate Scranton with death. Under the circumstances, I think that's a pretty reasonable connection to make. Oh, my first apartment back in Scranton? Oh, that place was a real gem. The kind of place you walk into and you instantly lower your expectations for life and question whether building codes were just a myth. Decor-wise, it was early Brogue with a hint of desperation, featuring a couch I'm pretty sure was somehow older than the building. My place in New Orleans is way better. I moved into a new apartment less than a year ago, and it's actually nice, suspiciously nice. They allow pets, which meant I had to get a dog or I'd be wasting that perk. The walls are thick enough that I can't hear my neighbor's every life choice, which is a new and exciting development for me. Plus, there's an actual dishwasher. So, it's like I'm living in the future. Oh, gaming had a huge impact on me growing up in Scranton. It was honestly my first exposure to the outside world. Online games were where I made tons of friends from all over the place, and I learned what life was like beyond my little bubble. I remember playing with people from different states, even different countries. I'd be chatting with someone from California or Florida, and I'd learn all these things, these cool things about their lives and their cities. Those online friends are still some of my best friends, even though we never met in person. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be living in New Orleans today if I hadn't been online, playing games, hearing about other places, especially ones that barely ever get any snow, which was what turned me on to the idea of moving. No snow. Sophia wasn't from Scranton, but she'd been there a few times. Her grandfather lived in Pittston, which is only a few minutes outside of Scranton. When people think of Scranton, they really mean the whole Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area, and Pittston is basically the center of that area. Comparing New Orleans to Scranton is like comparing night and day. Scranton is this quiet, cold, small city where not much changes. The winters are brutal, and the most exciting thing there was usually a high school football game or a trip to the local mall. New Orleans, on the other hand, it's vibrant and full of life. There's always something happening, from jazz festivals to Mardi Gras parades. The weather is a lot warmer too, which is such a nice change from Scranton. The comic book scene in Scranton is surprisingly solid, with a couple of great local shops that have impressive selections. It's not like the big city shops, but I found quite a few hidden gems there. Scranton is within driving distance of Philadelphia, so my dad took me to some, decent comic book conventions as a kid. Those plus the Star Trek conventions he brought me to, are what got me started on the whole convention scene. And now conventions, they're just my go-to vacation. Yeah, in college, my only real friend was my roommate, Sophia. We both kept to ourselves, so our friend group never really grew beyond the two of us. You know, it wasn't that we didn't get along with other people, we just weren't that social. And honestly, that worked just fine for us. Our curriculum kept us pretty busy, so there wasn't time for much else. Anyway. The day I left school early because my mom died is one I'll never forget. It was a typical school day, and I was just sitting in class, probably daydreaming or doodling in my notebook, when the teacher got a call. She told me to pack up my things because my dad was there to take me home. That never happened, so I knew something was up. I remember feeling this like knot in my stomach because it was so out of the ordinary. And as soon as I saw my dad's face, I knew something was seriously wrong. He looked completely shattered, like he'd aged like 10 years in a day. He didn't say much, he just said we needed to go home. That drive back just felt like forever, even though it only took a few minutes. Every second, it was filled with this like unbearable silence. And when he got home, he sat me down and he told me that Mom passed away. She was battling cancer, but I still wasn't prepared for the news. It was like the ground had been just pulled out from under me. We just sat there trying to process what happened. It was like the world was just spinning. When I think about movies and school, the first thing that comes to mind is how much I loved it when the teacher would show up too tired to teach and just put a movie on instead. Those days felt like a huge break, almost like a day off. I remember one time in particular, my French teacher showed our class Liar, Liar dubbed in French over the span of a few days. It was hilarious, but I definitely didn't learn any French watching it. Field trips in school were something else. We had a few memorable ones. First up was the dairy farm. Yep, nothing says excitement like watching cows get milked. We all stood around, trying not to step in anything unpleasant, while the farmer explained the whole process. I remember thinking, oh great, now I know where milk is from. Can we go home now? Then there was the coal mine. Now that was a real treat. They took us underground, and it was dark, damp, kind of creepy. The guy kept talking about the history and dangers of coal mining, and all I could think was, this is actually where people worked every day? The highlight, though, I think that was a trip to the Philadelphia Zoo. At least that was a place that was meant for people to show up and to look at stuff, but of course, it was one of those scorching hot days, and half the animals were hiding from the heat, so we spent most of the time looking at empty enclosures and sweating like crazy. But hey, at least it wasn't winter. Oh. 1 year in grade school, we had a class pet, a guinea pig. We got it right at the beginning of the year, and I don't even think we named the poor thing. A couple of months into the school year, we came in on a Monday morning and it was just gone. Our teacher casually told us it died over the weekend, so she got rid of it, just like that. But here's the kicker. The empty cage stayed in the classroom for weeks. You'd think the teacher would have gotten rid of that, too, when she got rid of the guinea pig. But nope. The cage stuck around for, an extra month. It was like a constant reminder of our failed attempt at pet ownership. I didn't really learn much about mythical creatures in school. Most of what I know about them came from my dad. He's super into fantasy and sci-fi, so he'd always tell me about all sorts of mythical beings. Yeah, school was more about the usual subjects: math, science, history. I do remember reading about Beowulf in English class, though. That epic battle with Grendel had stuck with me. That's about it for the school. The rest I just learned at home. I majored in forensic pathology and minored in criminology. I literally studied death in college, and not in a philosophical way, like actual bodies. Decomposition, trauma, all of it. It sounds morbid, but I like learning how to perform autopsies. There were rules, patterns. You could look at a mess and just figure out exactly what happened step by step. I used to think I wanted to be a surgeon. Seemed like a smart, respectable thing to do, but then I started picturing the patients, whining, panicking, second-guessing everything. I knew I didn't have the patience for that. Dead people don't interrupt you. They don't lie about their symptoms or argue with you because they watched some quack on YouTube who gave them bad information. The dead just lay there and let you figure out what happened to them. I graduated college before moving to New Orleans, so no, I never went to school there. I do give occasional lectures at local schools. I had a bizarre experience last year while lecturing at a high school of all places. I was giving a presentation about my work as a coroner and trying to make it educational but also engaging. At one point, I showed some slides from an unsolved case. Out of nowhere, this kid in the back raises his hand and says he recognizes the symbols from old Creole legends. Turns out they were part of a protection ritual meant to ward off evil spirits. I was floored. Here I was thinking I was just giving a standard talk, and suddenly I've got a lead on an actual case from a high school student. He told me everything he knew about the symbols, and then I researched them further on my own. It turned out the victim had ties to a historical society that was into mysticism as much as they were into history. We eventually ended up solving the case. Not surprisingly, the killer turned out to be another member of the society and not some evil spirit, but yeah. Oh, my college dorm room. Yeah, it was this bland little box with cinderbox walls and a window that barely opened. The kind of place that always smelled like microwave popcorn or instant noodles. My roommate was named Sophia. She was nice, just kind of antisocial. I mean, we got along fine, though. Mostly just kept to ourselves. Ordered a lot of takeout, pretended we were going to keep the place clean. It wasn't much, but it was the first place that felt like it was mine, even though I had to share it with a roommate. Yeah, I didn't play games much in college because I was just too busy. Between classes, studying, and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life, there wasn't time. Plus, my criminology program was pretty intense, which meant a lot of late nights hitting the books. But now, as an adult, I play all the time. It's like I'm making up for lost time or something. I had a few friends in college who were really into comic books. We'd often swap issues and talk about the latest storylines. There was also this professor, Dr. Winters, who I suspect was a big comic book fan. Dr. Winters wasn't exactly the life of the party. I mean, he wasn't cranky. He was just kind of dull, kind of a buzzkill. And one time, my friends and I went to a 3-day comic book convention. And on the first day, I recognized Dr. Winters' car in the parking lot. It was just definitely his car, but we couldn't find him anywhere inside the convention. We checked the lot each day, and his car was always there, but in different spots. None of us saw him the whole time there. He clearly had to be in there somewhere all weekend, but the place wasn't that big. So the only way for none of us to have spotted him was if he was in full cosplay. That's my theory, at least. I asked him about it later, but he totally dodged the question. Sophia was studying criminology too, just like me. She was super smart and breezed through her classes. Honestly, I have no clue what her career goals were. She just never really mentioned what she wanted to do after graduation. When I think of my mother and friends, it's a bit of a blur. I didn't really know her friends well, but she did spend a lot of time with them. She always devoted all her attention to us kids when we were together. But whenever Dad was home, she'd head out with her friends. I never really spent much time with both my parents. When they were together, come to think of it, Anyway, she was a great mom. She was always present and engaged when she was with us. But, yeah, I'm glad she still found time to have a life of her own, too. It's important to have that balance. I was in line waiting to see Ready Player One when I spotted a coworker, Scott, waiting in line with his girlfriend. I never really talked to him much before that, and we started chatting, and it turned out he was just as nerdy as I am. They're now my 2 closest friends. My friends once talked me into going to Houston with them to see Taylor Swift. It was my first concert ever. I love music, but for some reason I never thought about going to a concert before. Maybe I just didn't realize what I was missing. The whole experience was amazing. The energy in the arena, the lights, the sound. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced. It was an incredible show. I am so glad they convinced me to go. I love her. My friend Sarah doesn't have a dog, but she does this thing where every time she sees a cute dog, she takes a picture of it. Instead of posting it on Instagram like a normal person, she texts it to a small group of us. No context, no explanation, just a photo of some random dog on the street. Every few weeks I get one out of nowhere. I have no complaints. All my friends are humans, other than my dog, Spock. Back in high school, though, I knew a girl named Lilith who was really into mythical stuff. She was always talking about how she wanted to summon Cthulhu to bring about the end of days. She was pretty dark. and had this whole vibe like she thought she was an actual witch. She wasn't really a friend, more of an acquaintance, but she definitely stood out. None of my current friends believe in that stuff. I mean, we might play some video games with fantastic creatures, but yeah, that's about it. I've never lost a friend. Well, not to death, but in September, I thought it was going to. My friend Scott had a heart attack. At least, that's what he thought. He called an ambulance and he got rushed to the hospital. Turned out it was a false alarm. He just had really bad heartburn. But for a few hours, we all thought he might die. My two closest friends in New Orleans are Scott and Sarah. They're the ones I always hang out with. The rest of my friends here are, really more like Scott and Sarah's friends. We're all in the same social circle, and we all get along, but yeah, I'm not close with anyone in New Orleans but those two. So I finally got myself a nice apartment, right? It's one of those places that, they makes you feel like you've maybe started to figure out adulthood. There's actual matching furniture, and I even have plants that are still alive. Well, mostly alive. But here's the kicker. None of my friends have seen it. Why? Because we don't actually hang out in person anymore. We're all gaming online now. It's great that I get to talk to my friends every day without having to actually drive anywhere, sit in traffic, or even change out of pajamas. But why couldn't this online hangout phase have kicked in when I was still living in cheap, embarrassingly bad apartments instead of now? I've always had friends who are into comic books. I mean, that's how people become friends, right? Shared interests. One of the more memorable moments was at college when I got this mysterious box. Inside was the entire Neil Gaiman Sandman series and a note saying it was from a friend. Total mystery. Enough people I knew that I hadn't read the Sandman, but I could never figure out who sent it. There were plenty of suspects, but no one ever fessed up. It's a case I never cracked. All my friends are the ones I play games with online. Even the ones I met in real life end up being online friends because, they're gamers too. Yeah, the biggest downside, I end up playing a lot of bad games. You want to play the same games as your friends, right? But that means every time a few of them pick up the same game, the rest of us have to check it out too. And just some of them are just awful. Every now and then I just like to find some little single player indie game I can relax with just to have some me time. Something low key where I don't have to deal with anyone else's nonsense or explain why I'm terrible at whatever new meta we're all supposed to be into. I don't know. Just me, my controller, and a game that doesn't make me want to throw it out the window. Yeah. It feels good to escape the madness and just chill for a bit, Sophia didn't have a ton of friends. It's not like she couldn't make friends. She got along with everyone. She just didn't seem to have much interest in hanging out with other college kids. She wasn't the kind of person who suffered fools. It took months of being roommates before the two of us just really started being friends. Scott's got a ton of friends. I mean, seriously, most of my friends are just really Scott's friends. We all hang out together, but only when Scott's around. Actually, it kind of gets almost awkward when I'm with them and Scott's not there. If I'm being real, most of them are kind of jerks. That's probably why Scott's so good at making friends. He's just way less picky than me.